Every single one of us at some point or another has got the life's not fair speech. If something goes wrong, our plans get spoiled, and then some parent or mentor sits us down and is like, look, life is not always fair. Sometimes you're owed something and you don't get it. Sometimes you feel like things should work out a certain way, but it doesn't work out that way, and you just need to adjust. Because as a result of my often bitter, resentful, petty little heart, I have been on the receiving end of that speech a few times, and one that stands out to me is one that I got from my dad when we were in middle school, high school. We were poor, not kind of poor. We were really, really poor. Dad wanted to plant a church. He had a good job. He was a pastor in Iowa, and he felt like God wanted him to move to Fort Collins, Colorado, and plant a church. He never said like, oh, God told me to do it. He just felt like that was the thing he ought to do. I don't know. I was a kid. I was in 4th grade going into 5th grade. Dad cashed out his savings to plant this church out there. And it didn't really work out very well, but he stayed after it for a few years anyway. And I kind of did my wonder years in Fort Collins, but we had nothing. Like, we did garage sale Christmas. Really, we had to cobble things together. My parents were and are awesome and did a great job of making that work. One of the things that my friends got to do that I did not get to do, but that I really wanted to experience, was Showbiz Pizza. And I don't know if all of you remember what Showbiz Pizza is. I think it was the precursor to Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know if there was like a animatronic animal band rivalry between these two pizza places. But they had terrible pizza, and they had robot animals that played music for the kids. You do birthday parties and have video games there, like Tron and stuff. I wanted to go to Showbiz Pizza. And it costs a lot of money, and especially a lot of money when you're flat broke. And so it just kept not happening. But I would watch as my dad would run into people, or he'd hear a story that even as a kid, I'd listen to the story and be like, this guy is suckering you, Dad. That is not true. This person is lying to you. And I would watch my dad open up his wallet that I knew was on empty, and he would take care of other people's needs. He would fill somebody's gas tank. I mean, we would put $5 worth of gas into our gas tank at a time. He just kept giving away money that our family barely had enough of as it was. And at times, I think he detected my resentment for that, and he knew I wanted to go to Showbiz. And one time I got the Showbiz talk, and he was like, look, your needs are met, and they are met well. There's a roof over your head. There's food in your belly all the time. You go to school. You got friends. We get you around to baseball and all the other things that you want to do. If I want to be generous to someone who I think needs help, even if I'm wrong, I'm going to do it. And it was a very helpful variant of the life's not fair speech for me, because it went beyond pushing back on my sense that things shouldn't go wrong, and all the way to the level of pushing back on whatever sense of entitlement I felt. Especially in that case, because I'm the kid. I'm your son. I'm your firstborn. I just want to hear that animatronic bear play those Creedence Clearwater Revival songs on that animatronic banjo. I don't want that person to scam you out of gas money. I want Showbiz Pizza. And I think it did irritate me that those resources were going to people who just showed up, who we've never met before. Why on earth are we taking care of them when we're not doing this simple thing for me that I would like to see happen? But it's the same energy in Matthew chapter 20 as we're getting to the home stretch of this parable of this landowner and these people who he hires throughout the day. Landowner goes out first thing in the morning and hires day workers for a day's wage. They agree, they contract up, they get cracking on it. Then the landowner decides, like, I want more people to work. So he goes out at 9, at noon, at 3, and then even at 5 with just like an hour left to work. And he keeps hiring people. End of the day, he pays everybody, regardless of how long they worked, as though they had worked a full day. Day's wage for everybody. It's incredibly generous. When the people who were hired first realized the people who were hired last got paid the same amount. These men who were hired last worked only 1 hour, they grumbled, and you've made them equal to us and have borne the burden of the work of the heat of the day. And then in verse 13, he answers one of them, friend, I'm not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Well, how disarming is that right off the bat? Whether the grumbling was out loud or just visible because of body language, to lead with, friend? This is a day laborer. You are a landowner. The gap between the people who were picking folks up at the nursery at Eastern in 225 when I lived in Vegas is much less than the gap between a landowner in the first century and a day laborer. I mean, socially, to call this person friend is insane. That says something about the character of the landowner right off the bat. That he would call someone of this low position friend is remarkable. I'm not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? And he reminds them, here's the deal. The contract was a very good one from the beginning. Well, take your pay and go. That sounds harsh in the English rendering, but given the context, I don't read it as being harsh because he goes on. He still obviously values this person enough to communicate with him. He says, I want to give this man who was hired last the same as I gave you. Now, what an interesting thing to do. Why? Well, I think that reveals some things about the character of the landowner. One, if we go with my hypothesis that I've floated over the last few days, that the further into the day you get, the less qualified the workforce is, the thinner the pool that you have to draw on. That would mean that this landowner, he's smart, he understands economics, he knows what he's looking at, and he's engaging in some kind of put your money where your mouth is social justice. Now look, this is going to be a teeny tiny bit of a soapbox, but here it comes. We're all children of the internet. We all live there, we all hang around, and we all know how dime a dozen your words-only social justice hero is. The person who goes out and knows what everyone else ought to do, what is just, what is right, and their only actual skill set that they bring to the equation is complaining and accusation. We also all know people who actually do social justice, but you don't hear about it very much because the people who do this the best and the most meaningfully don't actually tell you. For example, my dad. He would not want me to share this story with you. He doesn't tell anybody about this stuff. He would never boast about these things. He does it quietly and discreetly. And I hope if he ever listens to this, he doesn't feel sold out. He just hears the respect and admiration of his kid. My dad and those people you're picturing right now who you admire, and maybe, frankly, you, those are people who understand social justice and put their money where their mouth is, and they actually do the work. They actually make sacrifices to make justice happen where they see injustice. So in this case, come on, this pool of laborers, they're all at the mercy of some landowner to come and provide for them. They don't have the economic means to create wealth for themselves. All they can do is plug into somebody else's system. That is perfectly normative throughout history. That's mostly how life is. We all have a tremendous degree of dependence on others on that economic front. They got dealt certain hands, or time has just affected them differently. Probably the younger, healthier, stouter men are the ones who can go and get cracking on things, and probably are the ones who can produce really great work. Those who've already put in a bunch of time, their family's a little older and they're beat down and they're injured on the job in times when there's no workman's comp, they just aren't going to be able to provide as well. And this landowner comes along and it's like, yeah, I have a responsibility here. I have the ability to do something that is right and just beyond just enriching myself. He's under no obligation to pay these guys what he pays them. And so he does a proactive good that is incredibly important in a society that has no welfare for keeping people alive and sustaining the families that are represented by those individuals who are still hanging around in the marketplace at 5 p.m. These guys are trying. So this landowner practices upside down values. It's not all about the bottom line and wringing every last cent of value after everything he's been trusted with. Further, we discovered that this landowner is shrewd. This landowner was strategic to accomplish good. In a very intentional, calculated way, this landowner built an opportunity that with dignity would provide opportunities to others. So it's not even haphazard. This person is looking for ways to do good and be redemptive. But ultimately, something else we observe about this landlord is that this landlord is the one who is in the position of power, the one who is in the position to be benevolent or not benevolent, and this landowner chooses benevolence and inclusiveness and grace. And his decision to let those characteristics inform his economic decisions is the twist that we always see in these kingdom parables. People are getting paid. We're doing business. Great. Yeah, this is just like the world kingdom. Whoa! Needle scratch. That is not normally how these kind of deals would work out. And what's interesting is that he has this very gentle confrontation with the people who are wrong. Notice he doesn't reject them. He doesn't chew them out. He doesn't tell them that they're monsters or crazy. He calls them friend. He reasons it through. And what he does is he explains. He turns over his cards. to reveal, these are my values. This is who I am. This is what I've done. I've been faithful, not just to you, but to people who needed it even more than you. And in doing so, he bounces the ball back to the well-paid grumbler and is effectively saying, you can follow me in this example. You can duplicate that and give it away, seeing that it is the better way and it is the better set of values. Or you can go to Applebee's and gripe and moan with your friends afterwards, where they will all pretend to totally agree with your version of events and tell you how terrible it is. And in exchange, they'll tell you whatever story they're fussy about. And you'll join them howling and complaining and affirming how terribly things were for them as well. The landowner's saying, you can join me in following this example because it's the better way, or you cannot. But if you choose not to, that's reflective of something that's broken about your character. And that's indicated by the fact that the landowner leaves it on this note. Or are you envious because I'm generous? One way or another, if you see this beautiful thing that just happened and you're not down with this, there's something wrong with you. I got no judgment for these workers who showed up first. I totally get it. I told you the story at the beginning. My dad did good and right things to people. He cared about justice even when it cost him tremendously to do it. And like these guys, instead of being moved by that example, I grumbled and griped about it. So that lesson hits home. But I still don't think we're to the bottom line, deepest meaning of this parable, because it's bracketed with these two statements that say effectively the same thing. First, but many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. And then at the end of the parable, so the last will be first, and the first will be last. And we need to think that through a little bit more before we move on to the next stuff, which we will do next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.